I'm not in Chalfont St Giles, but I want to talk a bit about Chalfont St Giles again. But here I am. This is Portsmouth on the south coast. There's about 250,000 people, not just in the what you see down below the hill, but it's a conurbation really that extends over the hill. Those are what are called the officers' quarters, the naval officers' quarters. They're big, substantial buildings. I've tuned in many of them because it's those sorts of people that have pianos, or historically had pianos. So it's a beautiful day, isn't it? And it's a remarkable place, Portsmouth, in many ways. But I'm not here to talk about Portsmouth. So I'm in the dark. If I show Portsmouth in the background, obviously the sun is behind me. So if you go to Chalfont St Giles to this day, more or less, I think the shops have changed a little. I've tuned there many times, you see. I was brought up in Amersham, and even long after I left, my parents were living there, so I built around, which is convenient because I could stay with my parents, I could see my parents, and I built around all around there, and many of my tunings were in Chalfont St Giles, up on the hills around Chalfont St Giles, and a few in the direct centre, which is where Bill Bryson visited. Many of you have read Notes from a Small Island, and this film is primarily not for Americans, so it's really for English. This is a burden I've got about the English. So whether Americans want to carry on watching, but sometimes you see a snapshot, don't you? You see a snapshot, a picture. Maybe in the press you'll find these journalists or paparazzi catching an instant on a person's face or some body language. They just capture that moment. They're probably taking tons of photos though. They capture that moment, and that picture just says so much. And that's really, out of all the whole book, Notes from a Small Island by Bill Bryson, which is extremely interesting, seeing it from his eyes, seeing our country from his eyes. But really for me, in the spirit, the bit about Chalfont St Giles is where he captures our history. I believe that. I mean, I'm not sure Bill Bryson knows how deeply capturing that incident was. But basically, he came to the centre of Chalfont St Giles, and what you see in the centre of Chalfont St Giles is a green, and then more or less the very same shops, although they would have swapped around a bit, but basically the same cottage type shops that would have been there in 1600 and were, from the pictures. They've been, painted pictures, history pictures. So it is true. It is true. I don't know where the Anglican is. I've forgotten where the Anglican church is, somewhere around there. So yeah, the fish and chip shop might not have been there. Probably they didn't have a fish and chip shop, but a baker, a butcher, maybe a practical shop. I don't know. More or less the same as around the 1600s. It was the mid 1600s when they had those Quaker prayer meetings in houses, because the Anglican Church forbade meetings at that point, I think, or made it very difficult. There were people in prison for being Quakers, like Fox, and he used to refer to these older houses, as you know probably, as steeple houses. because that's what they are. They're not churches, they're steeple houses, they're buildings. The buildings which house a group of people who are being trained in the wrong stuff. They're not being trained in how the gospel works in the spirit. Same today. Only alpha courses have now broken in a bit. Also some praise and worship has broken in a bit. Even some of my songs. Well, at least one of them. I was talking to a lady cleaning an Anglican church in Dylan Thomas's church. And yeah, so they had these sort of books there. They're a bit out of date now. They're in the 80s. But England's interesting, isn't it? Because there Bill Bryson was capturing something really significant. The fact that you had Chalfont St Giles, where William Penn was praying, where Milton, what's his first name? Milton was praying. Milton never came to the States, but of course his books are world famous. Paradise Lost. What was the second one? And Paradise Regained, wasn't it? And William Penn, through a quirk of fate, which was God, his dad had done something remarkable in the Navy. I think it was the Navy, or some military thing. And the king wanted to honour him, but before he got around to it, his dad died. And so the king resolved to give something to his son to honour his dad and what he'd done. And he insisted, when it was agreed he was going to give a portion of land that the king owned to William Penn to found really an early community, an early administration, he insisted it had Penn's surname on it, which William Penn was deeply embarrassed by, and so it became Pennsylvania. But the issue is that if you visit Chalfont St Giles to this day, it looks very, very untouched. Yet 400 years have passed. All you see on the houses are two, as Bill Bryson noticed, and this is the bit that's so key, he perceived something really, really strong in that there were only little plaques. Just as we, none of us celebrate Independence Day. Why would we? And yet all Americans are shocked when they greet everyone about Happy Independence Day. But we don't respond at all, or many of us do now on Facebook, because we know how big it is for Americans. But the issue is, it is not relevant to anyone in Britain. And in that deep sense, there's a lot about America that is not relevant. And yet, of course, it is, because it's become this superpower. In the time that Chalfont St Giles has sat there, sucking its thumb and going to the Anglican Church, a complete virtual continent, the North American continent, has been built in front of us all. And these early pioneers grounded it firmly in God. Masonic as well. Some Masonry is going on at the same time. Jesuit influence, the slaughters of indigenous people who are very threatening to controllers because they move spiritually. And they cannot have spiritual people as a culture when you're trying to dominate everybody and just screw every last pound out of a population, which is what has happened in the last 400 years. A slow turning on under the screws. We were discussing this morning with a tuning customer about different towns and cities, and was it Paris, and then one of the other places that he mentioned is now just Brussels. They're talking about Brussels. Basically, you can tell the spirit of the New World Order in the traces it leaves. So, around New York and California, the New World Order has decimated what were wonderful, vibrant places in just a few short years. That's all it takes for the big bankers, for the big occult leaders who want to shake the heavens and the earth. They want to create disorder in order to bring Luciferian order. They put that on every dollar bill for every American to realize, but they're so dopey they don't realize it's happening in front of their eyes. They've got no consciousness of that because they're not spiritual anymore. So it's going on right in front of Americans' eyes. But Washington is like that, Brussels is like that, round the exterior, and Paris too, many cities, beautiful cities. Still in the centre they might be wonderful places, but the proof that the New World Order is run by evil spirits and principalities is what happens immediately in the exterior of these cities. That is your proof. That is your proof of where Brussels is coming from. That is your proof where Washington is coming from. That is your proof of where Rome is coming from. So in the time that Chalfont St Giles is sat there sucking its thumb and is identical pretty well outwardly to 400 years ago, an entire continent has been built by faith and now is being wrecked by the deliberate occult attempts to create a shambles and then rebuild in the Luciferian image in worship to Lucifer. And Americans are still. So the point of this message is, Americans have got to the middle realms. They've got to the young man realms of 1 John 2, but they're not going any further. They're like a lot of the charismatic churches in England, actually, who have got so far. They've been around 50 years now. And they haven't developed beyond sucking their thumbs. They don't want the third level. They don't want the third stage of growth. All of us ministering that have been chucked out. This is how little they regard Jesus Christ. They do not want this man, and it's not me, they do not want Jesus to rule over them neat. You know that word neat? Where it's undiluted, where it's just straight rulership. They want their pastor. They want their Moses they push up the hill while they play below with the songs that we wrote 50 years ago or 40 years ago. They love their playing. They're going nowhere. They're not taking over any of their cities in the spirit, who they should by now be sitting on a hill. The dozy people are just sitting there going through the motions, just like Anglican people do, except now with the charismatic songs. That's the issue. So this is the word I have about Britain in general. While that's all true, there is some corner of the spirit of the British people. That is, because it has been rooted and grounded, whatever people say, however it's been broken down by the last 300 years, 300 years, living in the shadow of the lies of evolution, the lies of Darwinism, the lies of Nietzsche, however much that is true, we have had nearly 2,000 years of constant Bible preaching. And okay, a lot of it, they weren't allowed Bibles in their own homes until the Reformation, but they still had the preaching from the Word of God. And that has done something in the soul of Britain. So it doesn't matter how much they're being shaken and adopting the Luciferian model via secularism, which is just Genesis 3 on acid, let's face it. It's just Genesis 3 on acid. It's the same lie. But nevertheless, there's some corner of the British soul that is unmoved by America. And do you know why? Because the American gospel is not kingdom. The American gospel is not the reign of Jesus Christ now. It's not The kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's after we die. Billy Graham was after we die. Is securing a ticket to heaven and being born again, but basically now doesn't work. Billy Graham had no concept of ecclesia, the very thing that's spelt out all through the Gospels and Acts. All he knew about was getting people to have a ticket after they died, and then somehow making it through the rest of life. And this has stamped, well, Billy Graham was a product of the culture that somehow believes that. That's all they believe in. And then living the rest of their life in the flesh, in Genesis 3, with a bit of prayer attached. That is the American soul. And Britain is unmoved. Why? Because we see outwardly the result. We see the podiums. We see the self-aggrandizement. We see the loud music with emptiness. Nothing wrong with loud music as long as it's coming from a deep soul and a deep spirit, crying to the lamb, crying to the lion. But just music, loud music, brash music on its own, that's American. Everyone knows the Holy Spirit isn't there in it. It's lampooned in Hollywood. The charlatans, the showmen. Some of it's genuine. But Benny Hinn hasn't grasped how church works. Catherine Kuhlman didn't understand how church works. Ecclesia is birthing a man-child within it. This is Revelation 12. It's so clear. It even says it's the sign in heaven. So Catherine Kuhlman can't say, it wasn't there. No, it's sat there in the Bible for 2,000 years. This is the sign that is permanently in heaven. It's not about just getting people into heaven so that they sit around in their deck chairs for the rest of their life, trying to make life work. No, it's killing Genesis 3. Genesis 3 kills life. That's what it's all about. And Brits know that. They can't articulate it, but they look at American Christianity unmoved. And do you know why their soul is like that? It's because of the third gate of Jerusalem. Do you know what the third gate of Jerusalem is? It's called the Old Gate. Britain have in their soul, and by the way, it's also the Luke, if you get Matthew, Mark, Luke and John and then scan that across Leviticus 23, of the classifications of tree, then it's the sturdy boughs, It's the third third classification of tree that make up tabernacles. And in the British soul is something sturdy of God it's just been put there for 2,000 years. And we are unmoved by Americans. Now, Americans come with their faith, which literally sets fire to the gospel words. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. But at the same time, the gates of Jerusalem in Nehemiah all mean something, and every single gate is the kingdom of God. Americans haven't got half the gates. Neither has Britain on their own. But one thing British people know, although they don't articulate, they can't articulate it, is that there is a gate number 3. It is among evangelicals to a certain extent in America. It is among the Amish. It's among the Moravians. And that's why they also have largely not been unmoved by the Holy Spirit's moving in the last 100 years. Nothing wrong with the Holy Spirit moving. It's just that the Holy Spirit always takes people into the third level. And when they say no, you look around you at the Pentecostal churches. I was handed a key from a church established by Smith Wigglesworth. No congregation members left. The last elderly woman handed me the key to pass on to the people of the church I was in. But I feel that's significant. I feel what that's saying in the spirit is, by virtue of pursuing God right into the third level, the key was handed to people like me. I don't make myself out, but my generation, the people who sought God, the face of the God of Jacob. Psalm 24. And that is why I just explained briefly with the parable of the vineyard workers. So as much as you and me, myself, regard British people as backward, there's a corner of their soul that is like the vineyard workers who haven't been hired yet, and they're waiting in the square. They're not rushing into evil. Most of the people are not rushing into deep occult. They're living their lives as best they can in the lights they have. But they are unmoved by American, immature, young man Christianity. And so they're waiting in the square. They're not rushing off to do other jobs. They're waiting in the square to be hired. And when they can trust the person hiring them, the Jesus manifest as city on a hill, as something that actually works, the British people are going to be in there, but not with Americans and their silly marquees and their silly pop-up things that only last 3 days, or revivals that last maximum 3 weeks or 3 months, or with dodgy people leading the thing by faith. I don't know the ins and outs of Todd Bentley. I don't know the ins and outs of Paula White that I was watching a total biography about her. I don't know the ins and outs. All I know is these people are faith people, and God honours faith. But he honoured the 12 and the 70 that moved out from Jesus. Jesus gave them a brief window of what things were going to be like. But when they came back, he said, do you know, I was in heaven and I saw Satan fall like lightning with a pride like you've got. And he didn't allow them out. He didn't allow them out until all the 42 months. And meanwhile, he was proved right. They denied him to his face. They denied him and let him die in front of them to his face. But then that's just to show people what Genesis 3 is. Do we have to go that complete route? Does America have to go that complete route? Is that true? Do they really have to go to the nth degree, making a complete balls up of themselves? Or can they turn? And American, British people, can they get a glimpse somehow that God's gospel works? It's there in front of us in Acts. 42 months, 12 apostles, fully mature, doing outstanding miracles, but living together, operating together without jostling, going into houses, bringing the presence and substance of Jesus that has now been worked into their souls. And the pattern and protocol is written for us by John in 1 John chapter 1. There's nothing like it, apart from conferences, there's nothing like it throughout America. They're all jostlers. They're all going about their own empire. Same with the charismatics in Britain. Apart from Storrington, South Chard, and apparently the younger people in Chichester. Tim, my colleague, piano tuner, has been to these meetings in the evening, and there is no leader. They're elders only, a plurality of elders, just overseeing. And what ecclesia is people come forward by the Holy Spirit and give substantial stuff. The rest of the time, it's anybody whatsoever in the congregation, or It's just the Holy Spirit presencing himself, Jesus coming amongst us and ministering to us direct under the unction of the Holy Spirit. We have to learn spirit and truth. How else are we going to learn it? We can't learn it through a pastor gobbing off. Can we? He runs the thing. He's stripping and robbing from a church the sense of the Melchizedek run-off creation order. That's what church is about. That's what ecclesia is about. It's not a synagogue. You're wrong. The whole world is wrong. Read it yourselves. It's really necessary, this stuff. So I believe there's a corner of Britain's soul when they grasp that Jesus stuff really works, and not just the American version, they are going to turn. Amen. Let's hope America turns as well.